I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all members of the Housing and Communities Overview and Scrutiny panel, officers, members of the public and press in attendance at today's meeting of the 21st of January 2026. Always a challenge, I think, the first time you do a meeting in the new year to get the right year, isn't it? But there we go. Welcome to those who may be watching the meeting live on YouTube. I'm Councillor Steve Clark, Chairman of the Housing and Communities and Overview Scrutiny panel. I'd now like to hand over to the Democratic Services to read the housekeeping note.
Thank you, Chairman. Please note that this meeting is being broadcast live on the Council's website and on YouTube. It will remain available for a minimum of 12 months. I would remind those in attendance to use your microphone when speaking and remember to switch it off once you have finished speaking. Please switch any mobile devices to a silent setting for the duration of the meeting. If the fire alarm rings during the meeting, please can everyone leave the room immediately and use the nearest fire exit. Do not use the lift. Please go to the fire assembly point, which is located at the bottom of the car park where the garages are located.
Thank you. For the benefit of those watching the meeting online, please would members introduce themselves during the meeting if not already introduced by name. So, I believe we have apologies from John Adams tonight. Councillor Barry Rickman has kindly substituted for us. Thank you, Barry. Item 1, minutes. Are you happy to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of September? Brilliant. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest from members? No, thank you. There's no public participation. Move on to item 4, the corporate plan key performance data for quarter 2. That's pages 5 to 32 of your pack. Zach, you're there at the back.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Saqib Yassin, I'm the Performance and Insight Manager. So I'll be running us quickly through the quarter 2 data for our corporate plan key performance dashboard. Measure IDs 1 through 15 are for review today, this evening. So data is presented for, beg your pardon, we can move on to the next slide, please. So we've got 30 KPIs, 9 of them are marked for attention today. And I've just indicated there that we have 5 showing as green, 1 as red, and I've just highlighted those that are marked as monitor. The data is presented in the dashboard. I've just highlighted them because they're easy to miss because they're monitor KPIs. The number of homelessness duty cases successfully prevented has shown a substantial improvement in performance. This represents the highest level recorded in the past 4 quarters, despite the ongoing challenges posed by the reduction in available properties. I thought that was very, very good news to highlight. However, despite that, we have some challenges in our EA numbers. And although there is extensive targeted work with families to secure private sector and NFDC and temporary accommodation, some of this is expected to reduce EA placements in the long term. Of course, it's really important that we find the right permanence for these households. Conversely, the number of households with children under 16 in external accommodation for over 6 weeks has been green over 4 quarters with very much improving performance. Our 5 safety and compliance management measures perform very well, covering gas, fire, asbestos, water and lift safety. Just a reminder that the quarter 2 dashboard will be presented to all 3 panels and it's scheduled to go to Cabinet with commentary and questions and comments from all of the panels due on the 4th of February. Thank you. I'll take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Zach. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, Neil Tungate, Councillor. There's a question about the KPI 2, which is red. What actions are we taking to address that in the short and medium term?
Did you want to pass that out to the service?
Yeah, or if another officer is probably in a better position. Chris, are you in a better position? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. We are addressing that by finding alternative solutions to the families in emergency accommodation. Those families, or households in general, can be sometimes in complex situations. and we obviously take on board their needs, and we then are continuing to find their appropriate and suitable accommodation. This work carries on and continues, and we are currently turning a curve whereby we've had a high number of households in that accommodation, and that number is now reducing.
Another follow-up actually on number 3 on the households in emergency shared accommodation. How long have the 2 households in emergency accommodation at the end of Q2 been in emergency accommodation?
Sorry, can you repeat? My name is Chris Pope, by the way, Service Manager, Housing Options. Can you repeat that question, please?
How long have the 2 households in emergency accommodation been in emergency accommodation? So is this really long or...?
It depends, actually, because the numbers aren't always the same families, but can be, somewhere between, higher than 6 weeks, has been up to 9 weeks. And that, in those situations, we're not just leaving those families in there, we are actually working to find suitable accommodation. That may either be alternative temporary accommodation or more long-term private sector rented properties.
Sean, can you put the mic on?
Sorry, I keep thinking I've got a big enough... yeah, so it was... where was I up to? Yeah. To what extent is the rolling year subscription model or current pricing strategy contributing to the shortfall? And what is the projected financial impact on the directorate budget if this trend continues through Q3 and Q4?
Thank you for the question. That particular KPI and the corresponding narrative around it is scheduled for discussion at the Place and Sustainability panel, and in fact last week it was some deep dive insight into those particular circumstances. So largely that has been discussed, and the video and the minutes will be available for panel members to look at. But to respond to your question specifically, the insight really put the decrease in take-up down to a significant factor in the low growth at the early part of the season. There's a rolling subscription, so residents can elect to join at any time they wish. So if they're having low growth, we think people have tended not to take that up in the early part of the service as planned. Of course, when we're doing benchmarking marking and targeting, we're looking at history and in anticipation that the future take-up will broadly reflect what we've seen in the past, and that isn't always the case. But predominantly, the main factor there would be the low growth. We've compared that to perhaps instances of garden waste fly tipping, and in fact there's been a reduction in that. We've looked at garden waste being taken to household recycling centres, and again we've seen a reduction in that. So it all kind of conforms to the narrative already offered to the service on that measure.
Thank you.
Sorry, going back to emergency housing, it mentions that we introduced a new homelessness prevention team leader and some other members of staff, yet we're still showing red. So I just wondered when we expect those new staff to be able to make a difference. Is that change coming through?
Good question. There was some operational, again, Chris Pope, Service Manager, Housing Options. There were some operational issues with regards to the implementation of the homelessness prevention team leader. Having said that, we have seen an increase of prevention rates across the over the whole last year. So that is having an impact. Although we're yet to see the full impact of that, I think we'll continue to see more positive outcomes for that. That will then continue to then have an impact on the people going over to the relief side, and that's the area that we're we're looking and reviewing at the moment to then make improvements to that area, which then will have an impact on emergency accommodation use.
Thank you, Chair. There's a major changes to the private renting legal framework come through. Is it too early at the moment to see any changes, any impact from that on our services, and are you anticipating any impact going forward?
You're referring to the Renters' Rights Act. I think that we're yet to see some of that impact, although some of the, I think, private sector landlords who were anticipating some challenges with regards to the Renters' Rights Act have probably left the market already. I think those ones who are remaining are going to continue. I can't predict how many people might continue to leave the market, but I think those who were going to probably would have done so. But we've actually got some plans to engage with the market to advertise the benefits of that act and work with them quite clearly to build up a stronger relationship with them and actually advertise the Renters' Rights Act to both the landlords and lettings agencies, but also the tenants as well.
Sorry, just to add to what Chris was saying with regards to the Renters' Rights Act. So we've started planning already for that implementation. And what our aim is to be really proactive with landlords and tenants. So we're coming together with a comms plan so that we can get as much advertisement out there for landlords and tenants about what the changes are going to be and provide that educational advice to both parties on what that means, what effect that's going to have and how we can help them achieve compliance with that. There's also central government are producing a website as well, which is going to have some clear guidance as well for landlords. So we're going to be arranging some additional landlord forums. We're going to go out. We're actually going to be talking to letting agents direct, bringing them on board and just trying to do all of that engagement very early on so that we are ready for the main point of implementation at the beginning of May.
Councillor Hilary Brand, Linchester Minstead, I forgot to say that earlier. Looking at the CCTV rollout, we've spent nearly 67,000 on CCTV. I wondered what benefits are being seen by that rollout.
Yeah, thank you, Brian Byrne, Service Manager for Community Safety and Support and within CCTV Services. So over the past year, with the investment, we've managed to add an additional just over 44 cameras at the current threshold. Within that, we've been able to apply them within more rural communities where we didn't have them before. So in terms of that, we are seeing some real evidence capture. We've had some real significant incidents, low-level crime, right up through helping policing partners in terms of identifying persons and or vehicles and or incidents that may or may not have occurred. So we are starting to see that. I think one of the bits of work that I'm doing with the district commander particularly is to make sure that our policing colleagues are certainly aware of the cameras' presence and locations. So we're doing a bit of work with all the police officers in what we call our parade rooms, bringing them into the control room by beat so that they understand what's on their patch in their location. So that's again about enhancing awareness, knowledge and insight. We've also started to add that within some of our community safety engagement events, particularly within the retail sector. So again, where there's incidents occurring, we want the retail sector to know where those cameras are and to make sure they refer to them if they're making reports. So again, we can tie those in. So there's quite a lot of a wider strategy, but we certainly are seeing the benefits. Currently at the moment, we're at a little bit of a pause. We've added so many cameras to the system in such a very quick time. Our bandwidth is kind of hit maximum capacity. So not to cause the delay, we're still carrying on with the baseline infrastructure in the community for additional cameras. And when we have the additional bandwidth finally kind of added to the network system, we'll then be able to add more cameras to the network.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Paul.
Councillor Sean Gollan, Hyde South. The question relates to workforce resilience and sickness absence. Average sickness absence has risen to 8.8 days per employee, exceeding our target of 8 days, with the narrative citing an increase in long-term sickness cases. Beyond standard HR management, what specific interventions are being deployed to support staff to return to work in these long-term cases? And is there a correlation between these absence rates and the high pressures reported on frontline services such as housing and waste?
Thank Thank you. So again, actually, this measure, this KPI, will be discussed tomorrow morning at Resources and Transformation Panel. So it's one of theirs. However, we have done a bit of work as part of the Resources and Transformation Panel to do a little bit of deep dive in this. And there is, of course, the complementary HR committee where such matters get raised and discussed. So I can take that back if you like, and have it pushed through there. But generally speaking, of course, we have sickness procedures and absence management procedures. We have instances and triggers after which impacted on numbers. Oh, I beg your pardon. I thought that was on.
Okay, thank you. I'll move to the recommendation, which is to consider and review the page from on page 5. Are you all happy with that, members? Thank you. Moving on to item 5, the draft New Forest Creative and Cultural Framework, pages 33 to 56. Richard, you're covering for Joe, aren't you?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Richard Knott, Deputy Chief Executive, and just first of all pass on Joe's apologies tonight. Joe Maclay, Service Manager for Environmental Regulation, who has led this work and very much did want to be here tonight to present the cultural strategy and framework to you. So I've got that role tonight, and if you could go on to the next slide, please, Kirsty. Okay, so this is the first major cultural framework or strategy that the district has had, and the council has very much led on this with key stakeholders and members of the council in bringing this forward, working very much with interim teams as well. The LGR and devolution pressures that are coming in mean that it's the right time to ensure that the district can stand on its own 2 feet in terms of the cultural sector and secure long-term funding. District has been very successful in gaining Arts Council funding over the last few years, being a priority place, and just recently getting a second wave of 3-year funding over £1 million. So significant investment from Arts Council, and that work will continue. But we need a strategy, and we need the sector to be buoyant for it to be able to take advantage of that funding in the future. So the framework that's in the report pack is a draft framework. The proposal is to go out for public consultation, but it's just a reminder that stakeholders and those who are designed to deliver the framework in the future have all been a huge part of the drawing up of the framework up to now. And the proposal is that the framework will be managed by the cultural sector in due course, meaning that the council will hand over but remain a key stakeholder as part of that. So the recommendation is for panel to make comment or approve the framework as it is before you today, before it goes on to Cabinet for hopeful approval that will go out for public consultation, and then we'll be back in due course. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Kate?
Kate Cressell, Councillor. Can I reference paragraph 23? Can you describe the handover process to Creative Forest? And when you've done that, who will be the strategic lead at New Forest District?
So the handover process isn't fully prescribed at the moment, but as I've referred, the key stakeholders being what we've known as Folio, but are going to be Creative Forest, they will be the lead organisation in delivering the strategy and framework over the next few years. So they're already on board, but we'll work on the actual mechanics of that in due course. The opportunity for all to feed into the consultation helps that process as well. And in terms of the council representation, there's probably a couple of aspects to that. We've got Jamie Burton So there's a cultural / health and wellbeing arm to this, but also an economic development and a place shaping role that culture has. So we'll be very much looking to those two sides of the council in being the key stakeholder as we move forward.
Yeah.
How will you manage to evaluate the success of the cultural initiatives so that there's a process, a provision across the district which is fair and apportioned properly?
So the framework has a number of key aims and key priorities that are contained within that. So once they've been established more formally, we'll then have some key performance indicators and measures of success written in so that we know what we're aiming towards in terms of key objectives, and then we can report those through any stakeholder board, and that board can then make sure that the framework is delivering what it's set out to do.
John?
The decision to divest ownership to Creative Forest Steering Group, isn't it a double-edged sword? While it cleverly insulates the sector against uncertainties of local government reorganisation and funding cuts, doesn't it place a heavy burden of delivery on a fragile network of freelancers and micro-businesses to drive economic growth and ambitious partnership?
Yeah, good question, Sean, thank you. I suppose I may push back and say the fragile network is maybe subjective. I think those who work very closely in that sector know that there's a whole wealth of skills, experience, different backgrounds, pockets of some great cultural experience that we're working with. We worked with and built relationships over a long period of time. And during that period of time, and if you remember Keely, who was our cultural officer, she spent a lot of time building up those organisations to the point of being able to hand over. So it's not been an overnight process, and it doesn't aim to be. That process has taken 2-3 years to build up that resilience in that sector to be able to hand this strategy over. And I think you could look at it and say that those people know what works and they know what brings in the members of the public. They know where the engagement routes are. They've got those relationships with the Art Council direct. I've seen that with my own eyes. So I think has all the elements of success, but the governance that's wrapped around it once we hand over is really the core piece. And that goes back to that answer to Kate. We'll be working on that through the consultation and beyond to make sure that the key governance is correct to build on all of those elements.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to the recommendation that the Houses and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Panel supports the progress of that draft creative and cultural framework through the Cabinet and then to public consultation. Everybody happy with that? Thank you. Okay, move on now to item 6, Community Grant Fund in 2026-27, pages 57 to 82. The recommendation in the pack.
Thank you, Chair. Ryan Stevens, Service Manager for Revenues, Benefits and Customer Services. So this report is to consider the recommendations of the Community Grants Task and Finish Group as part of our annual Community Grants programme. The overall budget that we are working towards includes revenue grants, capital grants, and the community transport and council engagement grants. So we look at those as part of a whole budget. We have 2 streams, revenue grants and capital grants, which we have reviewed. The revenue grants this year we had over 42 applications, totalling over £500,000, which is the highest number of applications that we have ever received. 20 of those went to the Task and Finish Group, who met with the applicants. We had a Q&A and a presentation to look deeper into those applications, and of those 23 grants have had a recommendation to support, which amounts to £85,500. We've already got 5 organisations in Band A, so we reviewed the scheme a couple of years ago. So those organisations are on a 3-year funding agreement. This is year 1 of that 3-year agreement. That amounts to £72,000 a year. And again, throughout the year, we meet with those organisations regularly to look at things like projects, joint working, outcomes, etc. So we do work closely with those. With the capital grants, we had 24 applications. Again, another really high number received, just totalling over £317,000. And of those, 10 grants have been recommendations, just under £98,000 to be awarded. So the grants were actively promoted via different streams, whether that's with our own network, social media, Facebook, to make sure we try and get out there and raise awareness of the grants. And you can see from the recommendations that they support our key priorities and they support a wide range of organisations that benefit our local residents and communities, with everything from mental health, disability, carers, the LGBTQ+ community, elderly, households struggling with debt and finances, as well as looking at arts and culture, sport, environmental and community halls as part of the capital project. So a real range of organisations supported, covering a range of our residents. In partnership with Hampshire County Council and Community First Wessex, we're looking to continue to support the community transport schemes. There's 2 of those, the group hire and call and go, which support lots of people, predominantly vulnerable and predominantly in those rural areas as well, to provide those transport projects for them. Implications to consider. So the Task and Finish Group undertook a review. So following the process, we always reflect and take stock and say, is there anything that we think could be done differently? The Task and Finish Group are looking to reduce the maximum award of a revenue grant from £20,000 to £10,000. That's to manage expectations with the aim of supporting more organisations. They're looking to the actual grant application form, just slight reordering of it, just to make that easier to flow, so when we're reviewing those application forms. We also discussed about the in-person attendance for the revenue grants for Task and Finish groups, and the recommendation is to support that, so applicants who are shortlisted will be attending in person. And then the funds raised from the New Forest Community Lottery General Fund can be used to top up the revenue grant support for the revenue grant budget for next year. So in essence, increasing that budget, meaning actually we can distribute more grants to potentially more organisations. Those that are in Band A, as I said, we're continuing to develop those effective partnership working with those organisations. We meet regularly. We've got an example of supporting the homelessness with Youth and Family Matters. We work closely with the Crossings as well, supporting homeless people. So it is making sure that that relationship is continually reviewed and ongoing. We've looked to review to establish a 3-year rolling grants programme for those in Band A, with the budget to support those. Again, just thinking of the future, how can we give some more assurance to those organisations with those 3-year rolling grants. We looked at community transport grants, and again, looking at that as part of the overall budget. So traditionally it's always been separate, actually having that as part of the overall budget. And then a positive feedback we had from a number of organisations that actually this community grant scheme is really positive. Lots of grants at the moment are for particular project work, so short-term, particular project, particular outcomes, and again, not for the infrastructure or for the core services and the day-to-day running costs, which is what our grants support. So we did get lots of feedback from organisations saying how positive that is to support that, because without their ongoing running costs, they won't be able to deliver these additional work and additional projects. So that was a very positive feedback. On to the recommendations. So it's to approve community grants totalling £157,500 in revenue grants and just under £98,000 in capital grants. There is more details in the appendices. And that will be included in our medium-term financial plan and proposed budget for 26-27. The proposals, as detailed in paragraph 19, I've already touched on, and then to look at approving the community transport grants totalling £44,359 as set out in the report. Following a further officer review, there's a couple more changes to consider for the administration of the grants for 2027-28. That's looking at ring fencing and annual allocation of up to £165,000 towards revenue grants for those in Band A, with any residual budget used for Band A, as we have now effectively. So it's not saying all those in Band A will get up to £165,000. It might be that we actually don't do that, and any residual amounts will go in to support those in the Band B when we're making our recommendations. to make available the option to award on a rolling 3-year basis to Band A organisations. Community transports are considered in Band A as well, and then to prioritise the award of capital grants to organisations who propose additional or replacement play equipment. Happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Councillor O'Sullivan, I believe you want to make a statement as chairman of the Task and Finish Group.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I mean, it was quite a difficult job going through trying to decide who we can give these sums to. And there was a lot, as it's sure on here, there was a lot of people who wanted some funds, and it was very difficult at the time to actually decide how much we were going to give to people. We did agree, I do agree with what the report that you've got in front of you, which represented the findings of the Task and Finish Group. The only exception to that is paragraph 26, which was made after the Task and Finish Group, and includes further options here, which is to ring fence up to £120,000 for Band A organisations, which means that you're increasing from the 72,000 we've recommended to up to 120,000. So the extra 40-odd thousand would come off the 80-odd thousand that we give to everybody else, which would leave us about £38,000 to distribute to all the people like you see on page 66. As an example, obviously there will be different next year, but that's an example of how many people actually come to us and want some. And then we're offering 37,000 for those, which I don't think is us being, as an NFDC, helping out our community organisations. The 3-year rolling of Band A, we did agree with that at the committee, although I don't think that was minuted anywhere else. But the 3-year rolling was agreed. Prioritising the awards of capital grants to propose or who propose additional replacement community play spaces and equipment. Again, if you look at page 67, which gives you the capital grants we gave out this year, not all of those people would be actually getting priority on that. So I'm not quite sure if I agree with that. That's the way it goes. My recommendation would be to actually take out the ring fencing of 120,000 for Band A, because the committee, the Task and Finish Group, have quite capable of putting companies into, or charities into Group A and giving them a 3-year choice. But by making that in here, you're restricting it and saying, no, that's what it's going to be. Whereas we might decide we only want to put an extra 20,000 in. And the rest of it could come back into the other grant applications. So yes, I recommend the minutes that have been presented to you, except I don't agree with what I've just said in paragraph 26.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Richard Knock now to respond to the points made by Councillor O'Sullivan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor O'Sullivan. Respect the views on that. If I could just perhaps offer 1 or 2 words of explanation. It's probably a thought around the kind of longer term vision and the time we have left as an organisation, and in one way how the opportunities we have to change the process, given that the way the scheduling works, because we're here now in January approving grants that go out next year and in the next financial year, and then the actual application and assessment process starts, I think it's September. during that same financial year, which impacts then any budgets beyond, but also it's probably the last report opportunity to make any changes. So I do appreciate, in terms of timing, would we have wanted to added this extra input in a while ago and had that feed through the Task and Finish group? Probably yes, but we are understanding of the last opportunity to make these changes with this report. And I think the view is that, well, there's a potential that come 2028 in a new council where financial prudence is one of the first priorities, that the community grants in its current form will be changed, it could be removed, and we've got an opportunity to at least ensure some lasting legacy for you as members and the district and for residents. So that's some of the thinking behind that extra set of recommendations, particularly around the rolling 3 years, which you are positive about, which is good to hear. The value for money aspect of those Band A organisations who probably do more and work with more vulnerable people across the district, and the 120,000 ring fence is up to. So it may be that they don't bid for any extra. It may be that no additional Band A organisations come forward. But it's giving members a bit of a benchmark to say that they can give up to that amount, and that's where the priority should lay, because the council's money gets more value for money from that allocation. And the other organisations, whilst worthwhile, do good work, and this council has supported them for many years. There is that kind of just marker in the sand to say, you know, in terms of any running costs or support costs, that money is not going to be there forever, and some of those organisations may need to start to think about their own legacies and where they get future funding from. So that's some of the thinking behind that recommendation. And then in terms of the capital, it's a priority. It's not limiting capital bids to community play spaces or you know, family and children well-being. So it's just saying to the Task and Finish group, when you come to it, or the applications, that they'll be looked at first. It doesn't limit spending and awards to any of the other groups, but it's again about that legacy over the next 2 or 3 years, where members may want to focus that money and where it may go to, and how many years ahead children and families may be benefiting from that in the district. But the final point is, and this is what this forum is about, it's about scrutiny, it's about member discussion, member recommendations, and we've got something that is there in front of you to discuss and debate and either approve or modify and put forward to the chair as the recommendation. So I'm glad it's bringing forward discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Peter.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Peter Armstrong. I'm not a member of this group, but I came along because it's the one group that independents aren't on, and we've wanted to be on it, but we haven't. But I won't be able to make a recommendation, but maybe I can say something which others in this forum will be able to debate, and two of my colleagues who are on the committee that we're talking about know my views. Every year I've been elected, I've always been on this Task and Finish group. There's a balance to this. I think you hear that in council when I say that. I agree with Councillor O'Sullivan, but I also agree with Richard Knott. That may sound strange, but I do think the wording can be changed to facilitate both, because I brought up at the committee, the Task and Finish group, both my fellow councillors over there will remember about what are we doing for next year when we enter into devolution. And I did raise that a few times, because that is a factor which I'm aware of, and finance is something that will hit the buffers quicker than anything else. One of the criteria when we're looking at all of these applications is how they fit with the council's priorities. that is a big factor when we're deciding on things. So I'm wondering whether, and this will have to be put forward by people on the committee, I'm wondering whether rather than say that revenue funding for Band A organisations is putting in allocation of funding for those that we have supported in the past and meet the council's priorities in that particular arena that we're looking at, because we all know that some of these organisations we've supported for many years, and if they weren't there, we would have to employ more staff to fit some of these areas, and it would cost the council more money. I'm wondering whether there is a balance in that area to put forward some wording that still allows us to commit the money so that we don't have problems going into devolution, but it enables us to continue to support some of the ones who we could put on 3-year funding, but allows the Task and Finish group to make that decision when it comes around. I'm sure there is some wording that we can change from just saying it's Band A, because some of the organisations that we talked about, some of them probably should be in Band A if we take it forward, because we've supported them in the past. So it's just my few eggs throwing into the mix on that I'm sure we can find a balance, because I agree, again, with Councillor O'Sullivan and with Richard Knott, but there has to be a balance somewhere in this so that others, and I've also, at the group leaders meeting, we've had to talk about this, and Jill Cleary was very clear that she wanted to see as many organisations supported as possible, and we had a discussion of that with the group leaders. So I know Jill's view on this, Councillor Cleary, is that we can try and support as many as we can, but they need to be a priority, these organisations that we give to regularly, that actually meet the council's priorities. You know, some of them don't as much as others, and there's grading on that. So those who come to the top of the grading can easily go into Band A if we need to in the future. So I'll just throw that out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Peter. I've got a list I'm going to be going to. Can I just say that this is it's probably unfortunate that this has happened, but it's when things come to notice that you make changes and suggested changes, and this really is about ensuring that those most important, and that doesn't detract from the importance of all applications, but there is a finite pot. But it's about those that are most important, and the Band A especially, have the opportunity for some certainty as we go into the future. And we all know that we're going into an unfortunate uncertainty of future, which has not been brought about by us. So it's about that. Ryan, I'm going to just ask you, is there some way that you could sort of make some suggestions in the report somewhere that can meet those criteria that we've just been discussing?
Can't other people talk first before you get to a
No, I'm just going to come to you.
If I could just come in, thank you, Chair. If it might be helpful for Ryan just to clarify what the criteria is for Band A, and that might help the discussion. So Ryan is just going to come in and talk about what Band A's criteria is.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, in short, it's just looking at those organisations that we work really closely with. So they support our services and our teams. We have that close relationship. It may be things like joint work on projects. They feed into our strategies. We have a close partnership agreement with. It might be similar cohorts that we're supporting, referring in and out. So it's where we have that really close relationship, supporting our key services, which if we didn't have, would probably have an impact on the services and the administration that we're currently providing.
Okay, I'll go back to Councillor O'Sullivan.
The first thing is, last year, which is what was on here, we had, as a Task and Finish group, we chose the 5 companies or organisations that were going to be in Band A. We chose how much, we chose who. This is now being sort of semi taken away from us. We've been told that This is now going to be in the minutes. There's going to be a limit of 120,000. Where is as councillors are perfectly capable of knowing what level we want to be able to put in A, and with some perhaps guidance from Ryan at the time. I just think it's undemocratic.
Okay, thank you. Neil.
Thank you, Chairman. My objection is that it's trying to bake in some rules effectively which weren't discussed by the Task and Finish group. I don't mind next year if the officers bring these as suggestions, recommendations for the discussions next year, but baking them in at this point means that if things change in the next 12 months, they might actually be out of date. You might not want to prioritise place bases. You might want to prioritise something else. So, you know, bring them as suggestions, fine, to the Task and Finish meetings, but leave the members to make decisions. That's why we have the Task and Finish group, isn't it? That's democracy.
I think what we've got to bear in mind is that we may not be in a position to set a budget that allocates funding for the 27-28 years. So this is about providing resilience, and that's why the changes have been made. And I'm not going to disagree with the point that this is an officer recommendation coming forward. But what I'm going to point out to everybody is that if we don't put in some resilience, then these vital services could suffer, and it could have an impact on us. It is unfortunate that it's come about after the actual Task and Finish group finished its work, because the Task and Finish group has continually over the years done such good work and has actually produced very good recommendations working alongside the officers. And having been on some of these Task and Finish groups at the time, this is not an easy task for all those members who sit on the Task and Finish groups. And it is important to recognise the work they do and the recommendations they put forward. But sometimes circumstances change, and we're in a strange period with LGR. And this is really about that resilience. So I'm going to go to John Hayward, who put his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor John Hayward, Ringwood, North and Ellingham. I wonder if you could just help me a little bit. I'm a little bit confused with so I can understand the arguments behind why we want to look to this particular, to put in this 120,000 in and the resilience arguments, but I'm also looking at paragraph 11, which refers back to the round that's just gone through the panel and that we're looking at here, and it says no due to local government reorganisation, no applications scoring highly were placed in Band A. So I'm just trying to reconcile those two. Why we've gone from none in Band A to a recommendation of I understand the argument of why we need to do that, but why for Band A?
I'm going to go back to Ryan. This is complex, and it's trying to get your head around it. So, Ryan, in simple words, please.
I think when the Task and Finish group were looking at it at that time, that was the recommendation. Obviously, this amendment is looking ahead. So next year we might be putting either more applications into Band A, so we're supporting more organisations than with a rolling 3-year period, or it might be increasing the grant that we give existing organisations. So it is providing that flexibility going forward. So that's not to say all of that money going into Band A will be used. It just gives the opportunity to provide some longer term security and some flexibility.
Alongside Peter.
Sorry, very quickly, Ms. Peter Armstrong. We have a lot of discussions at group leaders, and Kate Ryan actually mentioned with her background in devolution that it's likely these financial discussions will start in September. The grant panel don't meet until November. That is why we seriously need to put the money in the right place, but have a classification that, as Ryan said, there's no reason we cannot put some into Band A in November if this money is allocated, if we need to. Needs to be some flexibility, but time is imminent, more than we actually realise. on these financial things, and I think that's why officers have moved to put it in, but the wording does really need to, like Ryan has said, you know, this is, we can put 120,000 in because it protects that money of the councils without having to talk to other councils that we're put with as part of devolution, but it still leaves it for the panel to how that is allocated and whether we want to put other groups that some of them get money every year from us into Band 8, or the classification is done so we can do that. And I think I see Councillor Sullivan nodding to that. So, you know, I realise the imminency of this year, as officers have understood. So I just want to put that into the mix.
Kate.
Over the last 10 years, I've been on a few of the task and finish groups, and I think there's been a fantastic amount of work, because when I first started, it was a bit on the back of a bag packet that sort of seemed to be the way it was working. So there's a lot of work's gone into it, and I'm very proud of that from the New Forest point of view. I just think that it's got a little bit too prescriptive, and I think that's what the councillors are worried about, that they're losing some of the choices that they used to make. And I wish that we could just meet halfway down the middle somewhere so that everybody feels happy. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take us to the recommendations.
I'm mindful, obviously, that I report to this panel and I am the portfolio holder, so I wanted everybody to speak first. And I found it very interesting hearing the different views. I want to reiterate again how grateful I was to the Task and Finish Group members and the officers, because I do know how much work it entails and how much time they spend on it. And just I came in and sat in on the summary at the end of the process, and Councillor Armstrong's very right in that it was highlighted there that the LGR aspect was potentially going to create question marks going forwards. So it didn't terribly surprise me that there may be other things coming forward later. But it is useful to hear the feedback. And as I say, I am grateful to the Task and Finish Group members for their time. So I wouldn't like them to feel in any way that it was a waste of time. And I don't think it is. We see the sheer amount of applications that were approved this year. So, you know, take some positive from it. It's just ironing out the finer detail of some of the aspects. But I'm very appreciative of the feedback. Thank you.
Right. I'm going to take members of the committee to the recommendations proposed. That the panel make a recommendation to Cabinet. I'm not going to read the whole page out. Those recommendations are there. I'm going to ask you to agree as the proposal, with a reminder that, of course, that we can raise questions at Cabinet. Members, will you support that? Are members happy for this to go forward to Cabinet where it can be further discussed?
Paragraph 26, Mr. Chairman.
I haven't got any recommendations because the speakers are not members of the panel.
Can I recommend that this goes forward with an amendment to take out paragraph 26 until it gets discussed again by the portfolio holder or the Cabinet? But as it is, it's upset the Task and Finish Group that something's happened after they've done their due diligence. Yeah. And I don't think it's very fair on the councillors that have put their hard time in on it. Yeah. So I would propose that it goes through without that last paragraph 26. Well, I'll be looking for a seconder.
Okay, that's proposed and seconded. So with that amendment that's been proposed and seconded, can we put this proposal through? Thank you. Domestic abuse strategy. This has already been before us at one point. It's been out to public consultation. And Brian, you're going to tell us how the public consultation went.
Yes, Chair, thank you very kindly. Chair, you rightly pointed out the strategy was reviewed by members last year, and as prior to that, following that review, the strategy then formed part of a public consultation, which was published between July and August of last year in 2025, both online. We tried to cover as much awareness raising around that through both local press, online, through some direct mailing as well, and certainly through our partners at the District Domestic Abuse Forum. It is fair to say the response rate was not, it was very low in terms of response rate. It was 18 responses, despite, comparatively, we did exactly the same process in awareness raising around the PSPO around a similar time, and we had nearly 800 respondents. So whilst the response rate was disappointing, what I'd rather focus on, Chair, is the value of the feedback that actually did form part of that response rate, and certainly to thank the public who kindly participated within that. It is fair to say the 4 key priorities identified in the strategy received a 94% response confirmation rate supporting those priorities. And within those response rates, we also did receive some additional recommendations in terms of how those strategies would be delivered within the work plan. And again, that feedback has been fed back into the work plan and will certainly will help drive some of those tangible areas within the strategy. The 4 key areas were around awareness and early intervention, the workforce development here at New Forest District Council, and certainly with our partners within the Domestic Abuse Forum. Chair, just to remind members, the forum is made up of both statutory and non-statutory services in terms of local authority, police, third sector and commission services within the Domestic Abuse Forum. We've also laterally had representation and participation within our colleagues from both education settings as well. It also focuses on high quality provision, and as a Tier 2 authority and as a housing landlord authority, an awful lot of the work plan will be focusing on enhancing the journey and the safetiness of our residents coming through homelessness or an existing tenant relationship here with NFDC as a landlord. And the key lateral aspect of this is around the multi-agency working and the pathway development. One of the key aspects of intervening within any incident of domestic abuse, and certainly when looking at breaking the cycle of domestic abuse when that's been perpetuated cyclically within families, is around ensuring that partners work cohesively at the earliest opportunity in addressing those types of behaviours. The strategy, as I say, has received some real positive feedback, albeit the response rate was low. We will continue to review why the response rate was low in this particular one when comparative to other strategies we ran at the same time. We want to learn from that and certainly look at ways of enhancing it. If I could take members really to the recommendations, which is on the report, Chair, that is obviously to support the strategy through to Cabinet and onward into delivery.
Thank you, Brian. A couple of questions from me on this one. As you know, it's a subject dear to my heart. As we go forward to LGR, what I'm worried is that sort of the New Forest will be lost, if you like, into that larger organisation. And we've got certain policies and fairly particularly unique being a rural authority. And you've got the sort of the dispersal of communities in some respects. Are we happy that we've got enough resilience with staff, etc., to ensure that our service in terms of domestic abuse continues well?
No, Chair, thank you for your question. It's a really well-informed question, if I may say. Absolutely, Chair. I think one of the key bits that we've, as a district, recognise is some of our beauty in our ruralness is also a contributor to some of our risk factors in terms of isolation, particularly for victims of domestic abuse. As a current authority and through our Community Safety Partnership, we actually chair the District Domestic Abuse Forum. So that is actually bringing those statutory partners who are both at a local level and at a county level. So those relationships and those partnerships are currently there. And certainly within our commission services, either through Hampshire or through the OPCC, or through locally resourced domestic abuse services, we don't envisage any change within those arrangements, within those setups. I think, if I may speak with honest heart, I think we find that agencies and individuals involved in domestic abuse services do so because of belief, passion and heart, and I think irrelevant of whatever LGR brings out in terms of restructures, I don't have any doubt that those relationships will continue, and certainly within our own investment, particularly within our housing services, particularly within the enhancement within domestic abuse workers, and alongside that with my lead workers within community safety, I think we're exceptionally well placed to continue as we go forward.
That's reassuring, Brian. I'm fairly certain that the KPIs are fairly consistent across different parts of the agencies, so that we get the same understanding coming out.
Yeah, just around the makeup of the board. When you read the Hampshire Domestic Abuse Partnership and who is in that partnership and who works together, it mentions further back in the report about having people that have suffered and survived abuse being on that board. How do they sit within that group?
No, thank you. I think one of the best indicators of good service and good strategy is actually coming from individuals who have had that lived experience. In truth, an awful lot of practitioners who are working in the Domestic Abuse Forum have lived experiences of that. However, we do recognise that actually they're coming from that position as a professional. So one of the things is that we work with those professional agencies within both community-based settings and refuge-based settings to work with individuals and see if they would like to participate and represent within the forum. Okay, it's a very sensibly dealt approach, because obviously clearly privacy is tantamount within this victim profile, but certainly we'll be reaching out through those existing partnerships.
Okay, thank you. I'll move to the recommendation proposed as you can see set out on the screens. Are members all happy for those recommendations to go forward? Thank you. We'll go on now to item 8, the draft homelessness and rough sleeping strategy 26 to 31. We seem to have been moving through our homelessness for a number of years, and now we're putting another 5 years of strategy in. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. Local authorities are required to review homelessness at least every 5 years and publish a strategy based on that review. Our previous homelessness and rough sleeping strategy was adopted in 2018, has delivered significant successes, including investment in council-owned temporary accommodation and a sustained reduction in rough sleeping from around about 20 people to an average of 2 people in the last count. However, demand and complexity has changed significantly since 2018. In response, a comprehensive homelessness review was undertaken in 2025 with consultation with key partners and stakeholders. This new draft strategy reflects these changes and places a stronger emphasis on innovation and also prevention. This draft strategy sets out clear vision aligned with the Council's corporate plan of 2024 to 2028 and the Government's National Plan for Homelessness, and focuses on 6 key priorities. Preventing and relieving homelessness wherever possible. Reducing the use of emergency accommodation and aiming to get to as close to zero as practical. Investing in accommodation, including council-owned and alternative solutions. Providing early, easy-to-access advice and support for all residents. Working in partnership with statutory, voluntary and community organisations. And ending rough sleeping in the district. Overall, this strategy seeks to move earlier, act faster and support households before homelessness becomes entrenched. Can I ask Chair to move to the recommendations, please?
Any questions from members? Richard.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Richard Frampton. Our latest strategy in response to the Reduction Act 2018 delivers significant changes and improvements, particularly in delivering new temporary accommodation and eliminating rough sleeping. What innovation will this review bring? Is there anything that's going to be exciting?
Exciting might be a stretch. But, however, we will continue to review innovations and good practice across the country. So, for example, this is just an idea, but you know, some local authorities are testing out using AI to predict homelessness using a vast swathes of different data. It's very early stage at this point in time, and we haven't tried that yet. But we're listening to other local authorities to see how they're getting on. And it's mixed views, to be fair, but it's something that might be kind of fairly routine in, say, 5 years' time. So let's consider those innovations. Also, we continue to invest in temporary accommodation, and it's our accommodation, and we own those buildings, and it's quality. So we're in control of that. So maybe the second part isn't innovative, but it is compared to other local authorities.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, getting on to the accommodation, emergency accommodation that we own, can I just please record my thanks to all of the frontline officers we have that work at the coalface, because I had an incident in my ward just before Christmas with a rough sleeper who didn't particularly want what was offered, and so it puts the officers in even more of a situation. And do you know, it was nearly Christmas, most people had gone home. They worked their socks off to actually get this resolved and find a bed for that person for the night. And I am always going to be indebted to them.
Yeah, the only thing they didn't have was the sleigh to make it a real Christmas, wasn't it? But I echo that, those sentiments from my experience in the past as well. Sean.
While there's much to commend, you know, of the work that's being done, the strategy exposes a critical failure in upstream prevention and too many families facing the trauma of statutory homelessness. What are we going to be doing to pivot from crisis management to reducing family evictions to ensure that no resident is forced to reach the point of crisis before they actually get the help they need?
Thank you. It's a really good point, and that's why we've have a heavy emphasis on prevention at an early stage. If we can prevent homelessness at a very early stage, so for example, one of the highest reasons for homelessness is friend and family evictions. Now, if we can get to that stage at a very early stage and speak to the household, perhaps mediate, talk about the solutions, and work out what those issues are, we could perhaps resolve those issues at the earliest possible stage, which then means they're not moving on to crisis areas and perhaps the need for emergency accommodation. So it's all about prevention, and that work continues.
Can I have a follow-on question? That sounds wonderful, and I know at some point you can't deal with it till you know about it. So how are you actually going to get people's consciousness raised so that they will be approaching us early, rather than they're in dire straits and then turning to us?
Well, thinking about when people do approach, when people are speaking or asking questions about homelessness, sometimes the local authority are well down a list of the people they're asking. And maybe it's because we are a local authority, and perhaps that's what people see us as. And perhaps it goes back to the point of providing easy to access early information for people. And that could be a wide variety. So we might improve our website so people can look at those informations. We'll increase our working with our partners in, for example, the Crossings and Youth and Family Matters, and some of the church-based voluntary sector in the area, which we're increasing our presence with. Those kind of things that, having, voluntary organisations within the district who are there with the community and with the residents, and upskilling them so they can provide that information, also improve those links with us too.
Thank you.
Thanks for that question, Sean. I think it is important to look at the crisis that families can be in, but over the years, having seen the work that the team's doing, and the fact that we've brought on so much more additional temporary accommodation, which is to our standards and not necessarily of the standards that were, I think we're alleviating that potential crisis by having such excellent accommodation. But that will never be good enough when a family's losing their home and being put in that situation. But the dedication of our team is the one that helps to compensate for that as well. Okay, I'll move us to the proposed recommendations, please. Recommend that Housing Communities panel supports the progress of the draft strategy. Well, I certainly do, members.
Agreed.
Thank you. We're still with Chris for the draft revised allocations policy. Chris, I think this is a relatively minor change with no change of allocation in far as the bad is concerned.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely. So the draft housing allocations policy sets out how social housing is prioritised and allocated through the choice-based lettings system, covering both housing owned by the council and also housing associations. The current policy was adopted in 2020 and represented a significant change at the time. The proposed revision is an update of that allocations policy rather than a fundamental redesign. So this draft revised allocations policy brings the policy up to date with legislation and code of guidance, statutory guidance. It does not change the existing banding structure, and it continues to meet the legal requirements of the Housing Act 1996, including the duty to give reasonable preference to groups such as those who are homeless, overcrowded, or experiencing medical or welfare needs. As Chair said, this is a revised policy, so just to bring it up to date, but the key updates reflect the Domestic Abuse Act 2021, GDPR updates, and the new Domestic Abuse and Care Leavers Regulations of 2025, just to summarise. In the pack you would have seen the more detail. In addition, the revised policy clarifies eligibility, health criteria, strengthens rural and key worker provisions, and improves transparency around allocation and review process. These changes improve clarity, fairness, and legal robustness without altering who receives the priority.
Kate Cressell, District Councillor. How will you be able to ensure that the housing landlords will meet the new standards?
So I just need to seek clarity on the question. Is that under the Renters' Rights Act you're referring to, under the standards of that housing, or the standards of those qualifications?
I just mean that you've got a new revised policy, and I just wonder how you're going to manage to make the landlords follow the policies.
Yeah, so this is allocating social housing, so both our own council properties and also the housing owned by the housing associations. So the quality is set by the regulator. So the regulator, social landlords will set those standards. So this allocations policy doesn't set those standards. It allocates the properties from the people on the housing register.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, thank you. Can I ask one more? The band 1 that sets out the criteria for emergency moves, how do you make sure that it's robust and that it's only for a very short period of time for people to be in that band?
Band 1 is the highest priority. So those are the people in that. There's a very few people in that banding. It's about 36 at the moment, and that reflects the highest priority of those people with health and well-being or emergency situations such as domestic abuse. Whilst we can't ever guarantee how long someone will be in that priority banding, because of we can't really predict when the right property will occur at the right time. It is usually for the shortest. We keep them for the shortest amount of possible period, and of course those reviews are carried out annually to make sure that their priority situation is correct.
Okay, thank you.
John.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor John Haywood, Ringwood North and Ellingham. In the past, for a number of years, I was a trustee of an almshouse, the one in Ringwood, Ringwood United Charities. And I just wondered how our housing services interact with almshouses, who, my understanding, certainly Ringwood wasn't, and generally aren't registered social housing providers, but they are something similar. They can provide similar services, and they're there, and they often do have capacity. So is that something that we do today, and is there scope to increase that at all, or is there a need to increase that at all? Thank you.
This allocations policy doesn't allocate to almshouses. And we have nomination rights for most housing associations in the area. So we don't always, as I said, don't always allocate to those kind of particular properties you state. However, we do have a good relationship with all landlords, social landlords and almshouses, but it's always something that we can improve upon. And we do also, those housing associations, we don't necessarily have nominations rights. We do highlight to people who may not necessarily fall into our allocations policy, but we do remind them of that.
Thank you, Chair. Chris, can you explain to us how performance monitoring will be able to identify if the policy is actually working well and achieving the intended outcomes for priority groups?
Forgive me, what's the very first thing you said?
How can you use performance monitoring to actually identify if it's all working properly?
Good question. So we monitor the numbers of people on our register, also the amount of people we're nominating and the timeframes as well. So again, it's monitoring that performance through those KPIs and the amount of time that's taken to allocate those properties as well, because it's not just about nominating people, it's about moving them on as well. So through the monitoring of the numbers.
Any other members? No? Thank you. Can I take you to that recommendation that we support the revision of the housing allocation policy as outlined? Thank you. Members, can I take you back, please, to the community grant thing? We've been working in the background here to sort of refine the recommendation. And I'm going to ask now that we put into the wording of the recommendation the following, that the panel recommends a procedural change to award Band A organisations a rolling 3-year award if agreed by the Task and Finish Group, and for any further procedural changes brought about by LGR to be considered by the Task and Finish Group and agreed through the portfolio holder for communities. I think that covers everything of the discussions, and I'm sorry to take you back, but it wasn't exactly easy sitting up here with Richard and to actually work on the wording. But things were going on in the background, as you probably realised. Can you clearly, for the purposes of the public knowing what's going on as well, clearly indicate that you're happy with that wording for that proposal?
Agreed, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that seems to be agreed. Thank you.
Well done.
Right, I've forgotten where I am now. So we now move forward to the landlord antisocial behaviour strategy. Again, this is a report we've seen before. It's come back after some consultation. Chris.
Yes, good evening. I'm Chris Pike, so ASB and Neighbourhood Manager for the New Forest Council. So the report in front of you sets out the results from the public consultation and presents the final housing landlord ASB strategy. Just to remind everyone, the strategic purpose was better outcome for tenants, preventing and addressing and resolving antisocial behaviour, and creating that consistent, accountable, partnership-led service, for which there are 4 priorities. Following the consultation, we have reshifted those, and the first priority is now putting tenants first. Second priority, preventing and early intervention. Third, managing risk and supporting victims. And finally, fourth, working in partnership. Just to provide an update on the consultation, which ran between May and August 2025, we we did quite a broad consultation approach in terms of drop-in sessions, online survey, email banners, contacting tenants directly. We didn't have a massive response in that formal consultation, but we did get out and about in our drop-in services, and overall there is a broad support for that proactive approach to antisocial behaviour, that shift in behaviour-based languages and making sure we're sharing those positive outcomes, and that came through from the tenant involvement group around making sure that we're addressing that tenant stigma and we're not just sharing the negative stories but also the positive stories of interventions. And finally, it was around making sure that we strengthen both our internal protocols across housing and within the community safety teams, CCTV, but also with our external partners such as the police. The current team structure at the moment has been running for around a year, where we've continued to split the ASB neighbour service separately, so we have separate neighboured officers that are dedicated to look at ASB reports and neighbour reports, and then a separate service around tenancy sustainment to make sure we're prioritising those interventions. So the current alignment of the strategy supports the corporate plan. The implications to consider is obviously making sure that we continue to ensure that easy reporting, that prompt action to make sure that we meet the regulatory standards. The delivery is within existing budgets. The only risks are if we don't deliver those, then we could be met with housing ombudsman fines, or our standards not being met by the regulator, and then the legal requirements around our standards, but also making sure that when we're going to court, there might be legal remedies required if our ASB interventions fail. So overall, just closer partnerships within ourselves housing, environment protection, community safety, and then also that continued involvement with our tenants to make sure that we're listening to them and engaging them directly around those ASB reports. To bring you forward to the recommendations, so you can note the consultation findings in Appendix 2 of the reports, but ultimately the Council is committed to providing an effective and compliant estate and tenancy management service in response to our statutory and regulatory requirements, ensuring that cases of antisocial behaviours and reported problems between neighbours are responded to with clear actions agreed with the complainants. We're committed to developing those internal protocols across housing and the wider council, and we're committed to improving our ASB satisfaction measures, along with sharing communications around successes around communication, community-led interventions, but also the positive outcome interventions. Ultimately, the strategy will inform our longer-term framework of service delivery within housing and how we align ourselves with our partner agencies. Right, any questions?
Thank you. How does the strategy ensure compliance with statutory landlord responsibilities and new regulatory standards?
So the main, if we recall last year when I brought forward the ASB policies, the hate crime policies and the good neighbourhood management policies, so that they're the key tools the regulator are looking at us at and making sure that we're compliant. And then it's the satisfaction measures to make sure that we're showing that we're doing a good job. This strategy is more that work plan to make sure there's that continual improvement and that dedication to move that satisfaction forward, because even though we're benchmarked relatively well, it is one of our lower performing measures, unfortunately, so we want that commitment to bring that up.
Thanks. Just a quick follow-up then. So the performance measures, you're tracking tenant satisfaction. How do you track the effectiveness of interventions?
It's a very personal view sometimes, isn't it? Because we have a lot of data that's coming through now. So luckily we introduced our case management system a couple of years ago, and this allows us to track the type of reports that we're getting through. So be it if it's that we get an increased report of dog barking or increased reports of drug-related harm, we can hopefully adapt our services around that. I think overall, and that's through experience with working with people, they want prompt response times, they want direct officers, they want people to be able to speak to, they want to see that their report's being progressed. And as long as that's happening, then you'll naturally see a reduction in things like corporate complaints, you'll see an increase in satisfaction, and we can get more preventative, then we're not working on the back foot so much. So it's that quantity data, that qualitative. So tenants are telling us we're doing a good job, and I think overall we do get that. We are always going to have people that aren't completely satisfied with our response. That's the nature of antisocial behaviour, unfortunately. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. It's good to see within the slides that we're looking at and bringing in the need to, with behaviours to reduce stigma as well. So I'm pleased to see that in the briefing. So we move to the recommendations, as you can see on the screen. Everybody in favour of that? Thank you. On to the housing revenue account budget and the housing public sector capital expenditure programme.
Chairman, obviously, if you don't mind, I'll start. I'm Kevin Green, the Principal Service Accountant, and I'll start with the introduction on the slides. But in the spirit of the joint report between Finance and Housing, we're going to share this. I'm going to share the introduction with Paul. Chairman, the budget report is a complex report involving a significant number of figures, but I hope members will recognise the presentation of it from previous years, where actually the format is set out in much the same way in previous years to hopefully aid understanding. The report sets out a proposed balanced budget for 26/7 and does include within it decisions to be taken on various rents and service charges. Members may recall that when we set the budget for this financial year, we increased fairly significantly the amount of money that we'll be spending on maintenance budgets, and it's proposed in this report to continue to spend that same level of money enhanced by inflation again in 26/27. Indeed, we've been actually spending over £19 million on people's properties on maintenance issues, and that equates to about £3,600 per property, so a significant investment in maintenance. We're also including budgets of £1.3 million for additional fire safety and statutory compliance works, and an enhanced budget of £3 million for home energy improvement programmes. It also includes a capital programme of continuing of about £15 million for development and acquisition of new council dwellings. So again, a significant capital programme as well as a detailed revenue one. It should be noted as well that the capital programme itself does require the council to increase its loan financing of that by about £14 million. And this borrowing is then covered in the medium to long term through rents payable by tenants. The budget you're looking at particularly is for a single year for 26/7, but it is being set in context of a 30-year business plan, which shows that what is being proposed is affordable over the longer term.
Thank you, Chair. So there are some big implications and issues to consider within this report. So the report does recommend maximum uplifts on the housing side, on the dwelling rents as it's called. These are social rents. It doesn't apply to affordable rents. It doesn't apply to shared ownership, the maximum amounts. The standard amounts will, and on garage rents. So I think it's just important to pick up in the report from a housing point of view. This is purely about the social rents, our cheapest rents, if you like, at the moment, for the maximum uplift. We haven't got the answer from government yet, what that maximum uplift will be allowed. It's either the 4.8% formula plus £1 or £2 per week until rents reach target rents. Target rents won't exceed LHA. So there is a debate about, well, lots of people on income support, people on housing benefit, people on universal credit. This will be covered and target rents won't exceed. The recommendation, as Kev has outlined here, is really about increasing expenditure with compliance, with the increasing number of repairs. It's contained within the report, but I'm just pulling out the introduction of AWAB's law, hazards and social housing this year, an increase from 20,000 on average repairs to 26,000 repairs by November indicates kind of the scale of repairs at the moment. So a lot of that's generated, and in a good way, because that means that we're getting our properties really up to scratch. It does relate also to the regulatory standards and tenant satisfaction with our housing stock and tenants feeling safe in their own homes. And is, as Kev's lined out, in line with the 30-year projections and the HRA's capacity for borrowing and debt increases over the longer term. Yes, we've got LGR, but we still need to do this. It's still a legal requirement to have a balanced budget in the housing revenue account. And probably next slide, thanks. So we did meet with the tenant involvement group, led by Melvin, but Melvin was a key member. He did a lot of work for us in terms of working out what the average increases would be and fed it back. It's gone through a consultation phase, this particular slide with the tenant involvement group, and the question has been asked, and we've been asked as officers to present this, but Melvin will obviously support and talk to it if asked questions. So effectively, the tenants agree that, okay, nobody welcomes these rent increases, but they are seen as necessary. The tenants value our housing stock, the quality of our homes, the investment we put into that, and the quality of services in terms of repairs. Our tenants are also very committed to development and very interested in housing development for the people that aren't accommodated yet. They know that, and it was discussed at length about the tenants. Some tenants may, not on benefits, will be affected in different ways. And we have spoken about, you know, the kind of schemes that Ryan has to assist. Would assure members that we are not a vociferous council. We don't endlessly, we have a sensitive approach to arrears. We do consider the can't pay, won't pay, so people do fall into difficulties because of this. We will offer support. We will look at different ways to make sure, that people aren't unnecessarily affected by this on a case-by-case basis, because that's what we do and that's what we've kind of always done. So, and that's kind of a written agreement with the TIG group as well. I think the TIG group have asked that we give this special attention over and above from what I've said in terms of anti-poverty, and I think Melvin can expand on that if you like. But the bottom line, as we've discussed, is that we need to have a balanced budget. We need to continue our investment programs. We need to carry on with the high standards that we set in place, and some of that is reflected in my other report. But 85% of tenants feeling safe in their home, and 84% of tenants from a 500 survey, which we do every year in the TSMs, is just about the best results you can get in terms of, if you benchmark across not just other councils, but also housing associations as well. And again, the TIG agree with these proposals and support the recommendations within this report. The recommendations are layered, affecting my earlier point about some of garages will be 4.8%, dwelling rent, social rents will be 4.8%, and potentially plus £2 a week extra until they meet the target rents set by government. So I'll let you, Kev, work through those, or back to the chair.
Very much, Chairman. I think they're all set out, Chairman. The recommendations are there, again, in the same format you've seen in previous years, including the same items.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the figures are always a bit eye-watering, aren't they, when we see them here? And the problem is, if you want to be a good landlord, you have to actually do the work. I know that's something Richard agrees with, that means having the money, and then you also have that anomaly at the end where it says balanced budget, which doesn't seem to necessarily work together in some respects, but it does. A couple of points from me, if I may. Obviously, we're looking to make sure that our maintenance goes well, and we meet all our targets. One of the hot potatoes has always been the mould and damp. Are we happy that our proposed budgets will enable our response to those reports to be effectively dealt with?
Yes is the simple answer. The money, with the approval of this budget, the money is there as far as we know. There are some other recommendations in the other reports where we obviously need to do more stock condition surveys. The increase in damp and mould complaints has become perhaps the main area of complaint, but that's on the back of the introduction of hazards legislation, damp and mould, AWAB's law, and also I think the publicity that surrounded it, from government, and I don't know, what do they call them? You know, these ambulance chasing lawyers and so on and so forth, increasing disrepair claims, scrutiny by the Ombudsman, so certainly the amount of compensations that council would have been used to paying for damp and mould cases is probably now tenfold, and, you know, with more serious consequences. We are the one council landlord in Hampshire who has adopted 27 out of the 28 hazards in social housing standards, and to be implemented from the same date as AWAB's law regarding the damp and mould. Most councils are doing it incrementally because most of this legislation's been introduced incrementally. So I think this budget reflects that. We prepared well to do this, but I can't say that we'll never get another disrepair case. But I think we're as well prepared as we can be. We're as resourced as well as we can be. We're focused as much as we can be on damp and mould, and we've done some very innovative work on taking forward 28 out of the 28 standards. The one that we haven't taken forward at the moment is overcrowding, so I understand, but we don't have a massive issue of overcrowding in the New Forest. We have more under occupancy than we do overcrowding, so, but that will come in time. But you know, the big is the real kind of challenging hazards are all included and costed in this budget.
Yeah, it's a growing industry, isn't it, the hazards and things, and the more we make people aware of them, the better. One other point for me, and I'll come to you in a moment, sure, is garages have been, we talk about them all the time, don't we? Yeah, we've got the garage increases on there, but how's our policy and projects going on about how we're going to manage our garages? How's that?
Yeah, well, only as of yesterday, we've received, there's been a full stock condition survey of garages that's been out there for a year. We've got very low rents, we've got garages in very poor condition. So essentially people are giving up their garages when asked for rent, or because of the condition of the garages or the use of the garages. The stock condition tells us that we have about only 50% occupancy now. We've got very low garage rents, but it will have to be subject to an options appraisal from the numbers and the projected costs from the cost consultants, how much will have to be invested in garages. And I think at current £14 a week, very few of them are actually going to be viable over if we look in the 30-year business plan term. They won't generate the income. And then the result of the question, are they wanted and are there better uses for them? But I think that'll have to come out in terms of an options appraisal. The focus clearly for the council has been on making sure our housing is up to the best specification it can be, rather than our garages. And I think that's been an historic kind of development.
Yeah, I think the real point is that these days they're more used as storage facilities, because if you look at most houses that were built 20 years ago or so ago, the garages were built for a different generation of cars, and the cars have grown and they no longer fit in the garages anyway, so it's an ongoing problem. I'll go to Melvin and I'll come back over this side.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to everyone who's involved in producing the report and delivering it to the Tenant Involvement Group, which I'm a member of. And although I don't speak on their behalf, I can say that it's appreciated that the explanations were quite, we could understand everything that was going on. And as tenants, we're very supportive of housing services and the fact we are aware of, and we are so pleased that we've got good, safe, well-maintained homes, and that is a big factor. We haven't got a lot to complain about, and that's a regular theme from myself. But what I would like to do, if it's all right, is to, the reason that I'm here is, as a co-opted tenant, is to
give the panel the opportunity to see what it's like for ask questions of himself as a tenant, and I can explain the effects of this the rent increase. My rent will under the government guide the 4.8 at 4.8 plus £1 or £2. My rent could increase by £37 per month. I'm a state pensioner. My pension will go up by about £8 a month. I'm not going to be in a position, sorry, wrong way around, £11 a month my pension will increase, and it's about £11 a week my pension will increase, and £8.66 will be taken in rent. I'm not entitled to benefits, I'm slightly above that threshold, and so I will be coming out of my income, which is just at that sort of level. We did speak about anti-poverty strategy, and I'm pleased that I got a positive response. One of the other aspects of this is, I don't know if members are aware of the complexity of rents within the New Forest. We've got, I've got a figure here of, we've got 263 formula rents, that's rents set by government, and we apply 492 different rents within the local authority. This is, when you look at the differences, it could be £1, it could be a penny, but there's differences. And this is the complexity of knowing where you stand with your rent. We have the lowest rent will be, on the new scale, would be £118.19, but the highest rent, and I can't identify which rent, I haven't got that information, but the highest rent would be £242 a week. And it's important to understand the actual effects that rent increases can have to tenants, but they are supported by tenants. We do need to keep our properties well maintained. We do need to have good services, and we do need to have, if I just quickly, I've had new double glazing into my property, I've had a substantial roof repair, and I've had a new boiler fitted. We're getting there as far as the decent home, well, we are above and beyond the decent home standard in my belief, and long may it continue. So the rent increase is needed and supported.
Thank you for that, Melvin. I think it's important when you point out the impact it can have on the individual, but also the fact that the tenants support the increases. And Paul said when he was doing the presentation that, of course, we always try to think about the individual and make adjustment where we can. So it's not just about coming up with these blanket increases. It's also about remembering there's people at the other end as well, and I think you've made that point for us very well. But I think also Paul emphasised that in the presentation, that we do actually care about people. Paul, do you want to come back?
Just to add to that, Chair, so I don't think we've got 242 formula rents, but obviously when people have moved in and moved out and the voids over the years, and then inflation has arisen, and then we've got several types of property within the housing revenue account, including temporary accommodation, including technically, there's some confusion with PSL properties as well, and other things. So the rent increase plus the £1 plus £2 applies to social tenancies, so those are the ones at the lowest rents already. When Target 2-3 years ago, I think in 2023, when it was the 7% or the 11% debate as discussed in more detail as Kevin's laid out in the finances. When those properties were then refilled after 7% rent, it gets very complicated rents, but they went automatically to target rent. So we already have 1,000 tenants or 1,000 properties at target rent. So the plus £1 plus £2 won't be applied to them because they're there already. This is about catching up, and once all the properties are at target rent, there won't be the plus £1 plus £2. It will revert back to formula. And I think what Melvin's highlighting is depending where people are. So if you've been a long-term tenant, you're likely to pay more. If you came in the last year or so, you may be on target rent. So it really is different. We can't give a blanket figure. I think we worked out at £6.11 or something at one point as an average. But obviously some people will be a couple of pounds, some people might be £5. You know, it's going to be until we get to target rent, that's it. And we still haven't had the decision from government whether it's £1 or £2 per week.
Yeah, I think you just explained the complexity more than anything else there, Paul. I think this is one of those subjects it's very hard to understand, and it's a good job we've got yourselves as the experts. John and then Peter.
Thank you, Chair. John Haywood, Councillor Ringwood, North and Ellingham. Just a quick question on a bit of clarification, a little bit of help for me actually. I'm new to the brand new on the panel here, and that is that the process of moving to a target rent, is that something that's driving the complexity in the rents that we've just heard of? And when they get to when they do get to target, will the rents be more simplified, or is it just something that we should expect in this arena, that we've got lots and lots of different rents and that's just a feature of what it is?
Yeah, I mean, when all councils and providers of social housing, because don't forget housing associations provide more affordable housing at 8% of market rent than councils do at fixed social rents. It should be more simple. The target rents, as far as even when I work for a housing association, if councils, we use the word target rents, but housing associations would often go above that, then revert them back because of affordability. They will most likely always be reverted back to the local housing allowance levels, because after that, if the council decides to pay, it then runs into subsidy rules and having to pay for that itself out to the general fund if the council chooses to exceed local housing allowance levels. So, simple answer. Once we get there, it will be simpler and more easily understood, and then we'll revert back to percentage increases, the CPI formula. The government promised a 10-year rent formula, which is CPI plus 1% each year, which is the 4.8%, and obviously that changes each year depending on the consumer price index. So I think that's where we are. As I said, we still haven't got that. The £1 plus £2 is how fast we get there. I think for us it seems about 2 years on average to get all of our rents up to the target rent.
Peter.
Councillor Peter Armstrong, following on from what the Chairman said about you doing a garage survey in my ward, some of them were in bad repair in one place. And when I spoke to an officer a while ago, he said, well, potentially look at housing in those areas, because some of them aren't being used, some are in disrepair. How is that going, and what timescale are we on for looking at them for that reason?
That's a difficult question because we've just done the survey. The reality is that, in all honesty, the council has invested all its money in its current housing stock. It is developing new homes, which is one of the few councils that does. When we get to garage sites, they're not attractive for our development because of size and scale, because of complexity, because of contamination, because of planning permission. So in terms of making a scheme stack up for new housing like the ones you've seen in Hythe, like the ones you've seen in New Milton, and I think Kev has pointed out that to even do what we're doing, we are borrowing money, so that has to be a business case. If we had more years left as a council, I'm sure we would get round to looking at a few and going, that would be nice to put 3 or 4 houses there, that would be good to put 4 or 5 houses there to meet our housing need. But my honest answer is, I don't think we're in that space now. Okay. I think we're now in the space of doing an options appraisal of the garages that we've got, and what's the best medium-term use for them.
Okay, no, I understand. Just one more quick question. With our surveys, which we have to do on a regular basis of our properties, how are we? Have we completed? I think it's 5 years, isn't it? We're supposed to do it, is it something like that? I'm not sure of the figure, but how are we off if we have an inspection? How can we show the full figures? Because we had a firm helping us a short while ago, helping us to get up to standard and get things in place. So when we had an inspection, we'd be, hopefully getting a really good rating. How are we in that position?
So currently we've got fully up-to-date surveys on 80% of our properties. When I say surveys, I mean decent homes plus the housing in, housing HSSR. Sometimes can't say all of that, but yeah, the hazards and social housing regulations, as well as decent homes, is put together for the stock condition survey. Lots of organisations have made the mistake of just doing decent homes and not doing so we've done all of that. That leaves us around 800 homes currently outside of the 5 years. It doesn't mean to say they're dangerous. It doesn't mean to say they're not decent. But we're on a full programme, which is actually my next in my next report is one of the gaps that we've identified to get all of them, so we can look the tenants and the regulator in the eye and say, we know that all our homes are safe, and we've got a 5-year stock condition. So the answer's 80% with 100% by the end of March.
Okay. I'm going to go to the recommendation now. Sorry, Sean. Otherwise, we'll be running late. So the recommendation as proposed. So members, are you happy to go with those recommendations as proposed? Agreed. Thank you. Next item is the Social Housing Regulation Act, our progress report, please. So back to Paul.
Okay, so you've heard this before and probably a little bit in the last presentation. So just going back slightly, I think this time last year, I think the panel asked for assurance, if you like, on each of the 4 consumer standards at the time. There was a general overview report, and this effectively is report number 5. So I did a general report on the gap analysis at the time, and we've looked at all the standards, the consumer standards, the 4 consumer standards in a row. We've kind of left the best to last. This was always our strength, in my view, and we did start with the tenancy influence accountability standard, which was the more tricky one, and we needed more time and more opportunity to. I think we were always a good council. We was always talking to tenants, but I think really getting into decision making, bringing people like Melvin onto the panel and everything else was a gap at the time, and a lot of those gaps have now been closed. In the meantime, there has been a lot of stuff that we've just talked about, legislation, increasing repairs and everything else, increasing compliance, and that's where we are now. And this is technically the last report of the 4 main consumer standards, and we've got a gap analysis in place. The report's quite thorough, it shows you all the gaps, but if I move through quickly, the introduction of the repair system that you've heard a lot about, the Mars programme due for June, is the big cross-cutting gap that we've had, which is, you know, a single housing and repair system that will give us a single view of the tenants, so we're not losing people. They've got self-serve and all the rest of it. So that is the big missing piece of the jungle, if you like, a big piece of the puzzle. But we are on, once that's delivered, then I think that will underpin a lot of the gaps across the consumer standards that we've got left. So I'm happy to move on, Kirsty. So again, we've done all along the usual consultation with the TIG groups and everything else, but this one's particularly underpinned, I think, by the tenant satisfaction measure data. So we have an independent, I know you've probably heard this before, but we have an independent organisation that rings up 500 tenants, not the same 500 each year, but 500 different tenants each year, and ask them specific questions. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, 85% of our tenants feel safe in their own homes when independently asked, and 84% of our tenants are satisfied with our repair service. Now, given that this is an area of dissatisfaction, the biggest area of dissatisfaction for just about every other landlord, all I can say is these are our highest performing indicators. So that really does reflect some of the investments, not the last few years, but, you know, for, I don't know, many years. You know, this hasn't happened overnight. This is many years of prioritising property and resident safety, to be fair. You probably noted that the overall tenant satisfaction score is 81%, satisfied with NFDC as a landlord. There was a slight drop overall from the 84% last year, but the two main ones here about tenants feeling safe in their homes are the ones that have actually increased. So that's the one we're particularly proud of, and shows that our spending decisions are actually having an impact on the tenant consultation. There's a full panel there. Recommended onto the recommendations. So I don't know if you've missed something, but essentially I think goes back to the early question. Our main gap at the moment is getting our stock condition from 80% to 100%, and really honing down on the few sort of missing gaps. Say AWAB's law, we're set up and ready to go and are going, but that will play out over time. And the last one there is, in the meantime, since in the last couple of months, you've probably heard us talk about the competence and conduct standard for social housing. So this is where we all have to do re-qualify as housing professionals and prove that we have competence and conduct in all that we do. We've had a good head start on this. But the fact that the regulator's now going to include it in its inspection programme, has accepted it as the 5th consumer standard effectively, I'm just making the recommendation that there's another report to do on scrutiny. I thought we were ending, but there's another one to do.
Okay. Sean, I suspect there's enough overlap on here for you to put your question now.
I've submitted by email.
I'm just trying to give you that opportunity. Members, any other questions on this? Hilary?
Yeah, it's just you were mentioning about the 85% or 81%. What is the target? Is that the target, or are we aiming for 90% or 95%? I'm just conscious that means we've probably got 750 people, 1,000 people that aren't potentially happy. So it's still quite a lot of people.
Not 750 yet. Do you want
yeah, I can kind of picked up in brief. Dave Brown, Tenant Engagement Manager. It's 580 tenants is our minimum target for surveying. So it will be a percentage that are not satisfied. I would say that we can certainly always... So the potentially, yeah. So this is, again, indicative figures. I hear what you're saying. Sorry, Councillor. Yeah, thank you for clarifying. So potentially, yes, there are a number of people. What we do with the tenant satisfaction data is we look at that, and those that have been willing to tell us why they're dissatisfied do so. Then we can present that on an annual basis to senior managers and service leads to look at where we can make improvements. So, for example, with the safety and quality, and certainly the tenants who feel safe in their homes, 85%, those that don't feel safe in their homes, if they're willing to give us that information as to who they are, we can contact them, or we can look at the narrative around that. For the past 2 years, we haven't had sentiment analysis. We have this year, and we'll be looking at it in more detail to give us an indication as to what the key factors for that dissatisfaction are.
Yeah, I would hope that like 99% of people feel safe in their homes. I find that sort of a worrying factor. But
I might be able to answer your question, Councillor. I think one of the important things is to understand how the survey is conducted when you're a tenant and receiving the call. And you're basically asked, how do you feel council's services? What's your view of council services? Do you think they're poor, very poor, all right, satisfactory, or very satisfactory? And so if you're going to get, the count would be, if they're just satisfactory, they're not going to be, it's going to be, if everybody said satisfactory, you're not going to get 100% very satisfactory. So I think you've just got to look at the figures. The figures actually reflect this landlord as very highly rated compared to other local authorities. And we are in, I think, the top 10 of on the TSMs. We are at the very highest. We're in the top quarter of all social housing. Quartet, that's right, isn't it? The top quarter of all social housing providers, and we're in the top 10% of local authority housing providers. So we're there. So I wouldn't be, as a tenant, I'm very pleased that we've got 84%. I think it's very good. I don't ever think we'll get 100% satisfaction. I would doubt the survey result if that came up.
it's just around the safe in your homes. That just slightly worries me. But it would be good if you can get the sentiment data to know what it is that's, why would you not say you're not safe?
Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question, Hilary. I just wanted to add a point to the officers and Melvin's comments back, that the TSMs themselves or the responses we get back is just one aspect of feedback we get back. We obviously receive complaints, we welcome complaints, we have feedback from officers out and about, repairs operatives doing their roles, feedback through members. So what you've heard is one aspect of the feedback. So we do try and triangulate that as well through the stock condition surveys, through other repairs that are coming through. So what we don't do is just treat that on its own, that 85% are either satisfied or not, but we triangulate a lot of feedback throughout the whole service and what tenants bring us to make that impact that's necessary.
Yeah, I mean, all I can add to that is that so the regulator will publish our results, like on, they say not league tables, but really they are league tables because everybody analyses them and looks where they are, but they are published results. We've had a couple of recent meetings with the regulator and a mock inspection, and there's nothing on our TSMs would give them any cause for concern, just based on the TSMs. And we have seen housing providers with very low TSM scores, 50, 60, even lower than that, get a C1 rating from the regulator. The argument would be these are perception measures of tenants, not actually what you're doing. So more of a issue on the gap analysis that we've got to get our stock condition surveys 100% to absolutely say, yeah, we're pretty sure that 100% of our tenants are safe, even if they don't particularly like an aspect of a repair or a disrepair claim, or there's something else going on. And as Richard says, it's one, it's one indicator, and that's what it is. But even that one indicator is looking good in the context of, being a social landlord.
Thank you for that, Paul. I know you've been through a fairly testing mock inspection, as has the portfolio holder, but he can take it. Has that improved, do you think, our resilience and the way we feel confident about going forward?
Yes, simple answer. I think it's highlighted a few things that we already knew, but I think what it's really done is narrowed down our priorities. So very clear from we're a good landlord, the mock inspectors think we're a good landlord, the regulator thinks we're a good landlord. Richard did a blazing presentation of, to the regulator, and we're not on their emergency, we need to visit them quick list, that's for sure. But the same things we really need to focus on, which we've mentioned, which is the stock condition survey. There is an ask for an asset management plan for the housing revenue account. And again, it's one of those documents like a 30-year business plan, kind of scratch your head slightly because we've got one, but it's slightly out of date. But yeah, and it's a 30-year plan. So again, it's like we've 1 year to go, but it's seen as an important important piece of work. And always we've got more and more to do on consultation, tenant engagement, knowing our tenants. So all the stuff we know. These aren't drastic failures, but these are really, our priorities.
There's no complacence there then, and I think when you see the sheer number of pages we've got tonight, and we look at that, but also the sheer amount of work that you're having to do, and that's just not you personally, that's the whole team in housing in order to meet the standards for housing inspection. I think we should acknowledge here at this meeting the actual work and effort, and it is an incredible amount of work that's being done to make sure that we actually perform as a council, which is important to everyone in this chamber, I hope. I'm going to assume it is. And so can we note our thanks for everything you are doing to keep us at that. And then at that point, I'll bring us to the recommendation, which is in front of you, that we consider the compliance against meeting the safety and quality standards, etc., as are on there. All in favour? Thank you. That brings us to the highlight of the night, the portfolio holders' reports. I'll go to Dan first.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I will try and keep it as brief as possible. Community safety, first of all. The renewal of the District's 2 PSPOs is progressing as planned, and as identified in the work programme, this is an item at the next meeting. Both the public and stakeholder consultations are now complete, and this process in itself has helped to promote the orders, and we are committed to doing more with comms on them going forwards. I would like to pay a personal note of thanks to Gemma Collins, who inadvertently broke one of the PSPOs, having had a photo taken with a pony last year, which went viral, and immediately publicly apologised, drawing more attention to the PSPOs than we ever could. As we've always maintained, education and awareness is our top priority with them. I'm just glad that you all knew who she was, because when I said that at the Community Safety Partnership on Monday, I just saw blank faces. So you're obviously quite hip and happening. In conjunction with the Environment and Sustainability portfolio, the Community Safety are also leading on a crackdown on environmental crimes, which will be reported in due course. Food safety, we're in the last quarter of the year for inspections and on target to do all high-risk food inspections. There will be a small shortfall of medium risk inspections, but there is a strategy in place based on the new code of practice to use alternative risk-based approaches. The team has experienced a similar turnover of businesses this year and have been triaging all new inspections, prioritising and assessing all high risk within a month of notification of the new business. Based on Hampshire County Council no longer running the school catering contracts, schools have had to outsource to a new food contractor or take it in-house, which has resulted in approximately 40 new registrations and inspections for our officers. We've received over 35 requests for re-inspections of food businesses. This is where a business wishes to improve their food hygiene rating score following completion of work required by the food officer who carried out the food inspection. These additional inspections are charged for, as is a discretionary function. Annual inspections carried for all 35 licensed Annual inspections were carried out for all 35 licensed caravan sites, and reports have been sent to the licence holders, certification checked, and officers have followed up on any breaches. The licensing team are currently testing the capability of tablets for new applicant driver knowledge tests, and are looking at going live with using them from March 26. The software will automatically mark the tests and eliminate the need to print off test papers, improving efficiency and reducing waste with the service. And finally, I'd just like to say the town and parish councils, I'd just like to note and thank the contribution of engagement of our towns, parishes and partners throughout the LGR process to date, most recently during the government's consultation on the options presented last autumn. That's it.
Thanks, Anne.
Thanks.
And, despite your pointing out her notoriety, I've still got no idea who Gemma Collins is. Any questions of the portfolio holder?
Thank you, Chairman. Not too much that you haven't heard already this evening, of course, but as was mentioned just now, we've gone through a mock inspection and the first regulator annual meeting, which was held last month as well. No surprises there. It was quite comfortable, but you never know what's behind the scenes, so you have to keep on your toes, obviously. What I can say is this evening we've heard five significant pieces of work being presented by the housing team, and once again I'm in awe of the amount of work they actually get through, and I'm incredibly grateful, of course. The amount of work is phenomenal. But I have to mention the TIG support as well, of course. Melvin, you and your guys, they do a great job for us. A great deal of, how can I put it, involvement, support, and also insight that's invaluable. I get a lot from the tenants involvement group. With regard to housing, as you'll know, the two units have been delivered in the past quarter since the last meeting. Hythe Hospital, which was just unbelievably fantastic, the development there, and also 20 odd units at New Milton. Now what that means is 40 applicants will be coming off the housing register, and that's what I'm looking forward to getting the details for next week, Chris. Just thought I'd mention that. I have actually, so hopefully we'll see a further reduction in the housing register. So that's what I'm looking forward to. The numbers are declining month by month, but there should be a big drop. And I think that, yeah, as one last thing, there will be some more coming out in Totton soon. In March, I believe, we're having the what Jill used to call the Yellow Door site next to the shops in Totton and Salisbury Road. They'll be coming on stream. That's 20 units there. Furthermore, towards Calmore, at the other end of Salisbury Road, near the M27, there's a large development there. I forget the developer's name, but they will be releasing 60-odd houses. Was it 40? I can't remember. I'll be reminded next week. More houses into the housing register. So I think that's just absolutely fantastic stuff. We are developing as fast as we can. We don't know what's going to happen after the 1st of April, 2028, the vesting date. We don't even know what's going to happen next year, to be honest with you. But we are continuing to deliver against our 600 target.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions on the portfolio holder? We move on to item 14, the work programme. I'd just like to remind members that should you consider that we haven't got enough on our work programme and our agendas, you are all able to put forward your own suggestions for the work programme. Bearing in mind that you had 552 pages this time, you may not wish to get too involved in adding things to the work programme, but you have the right. But is there anything we need to discuss on the work programme? It has been distributed, hasn't it? Yeah. And you'll be glad to know that the portfolio holder is already leaving because I've got nothing urgent to say now, other than the issue of those pages, members. It was great fun reading it along with you over the weekend, and I know you all managed to, in depth, understand every single page, especially Paul's complex. So it is a marathon task at times, so thank you very much. And you've all got the date of the next meeting.